30 BC. Now the Ethiopians, for those who don't know, Ethiopian literally means of the burnt face. It wasn't an insulting term, it was a generic term for black person, yeah? Back in the day, and it referred to generally all of Africa, and even the Greeks used it to refer to parts of India. If you go to India today, in southern India, you'll find people, some people, as black as any people in Africa. So it shouldn't surprise you if that term was used, but it was a generic term meaning black. Now the Ethiopians, as historians relate, were the first of all men. The proofs of this statement, they say, are manifest. They also say the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians. Now can you see, we're told modern science discovered that Africans were the first people on the planet. But here is an ancient Greek historian saying that Africans were already saying we were the first people on the planet in 30 BC. Herodotus, the father of history, there can be no doubt but that the Colchians are an Egyptian race. Before I heard any mention of the fact from others, I'd remarked it myself. My own conjectures were founded on the fact that they are black-skinned and have woolly hair, afro. Yeah? The Colchians, by the way, are a group of people in southern Russia at the time. A whole host of other Greek scholars, including Aristotle, and there's loads more I could have put, seemed very unconfused about the ancient Egyptians' ethnicity. We can't have it both ways. Either the ancient Greeks were one of the most intelligent, civilized people ever, or they were so stupid they couldn't recognize the colors of people they saw for their own eyes. But we can't have it both ways, you see? Next slide.
Alright family, welcome back to my YouTube commentary, and I salute you wherever you are watching my video from. I thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in once again, and I love you all deeply. Now, I'll say this. There's some truth they tried to bury, and they tried to bury under lies, movies, and false history books. Some truth about black people, and that's what we're going to talk about today, because for too long the world has pretended that the black man and the woman came after civilization, but history tells us otherwise. Scientific proofs and history proofs tells us otherwise. Even the modern science, you know. We are not just people among many as black people. We are the people from whom all others came. We are the root race. We are the true or the first human, okay? The first seed. So every human being walking today carries the memory. Every human walking today carries the genetics and the soul of that first black origin. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, because I'm going to present the scientific proof. I'm going to talk about the historical proof and spiritual proof. But before I go down with the video, I want you to watch these clips first, and then I come back with more commentary.
For more than 40 years. So it's incredible now to have the DNA data that really shows us what this guy looked like. You know, the hair, the eyes, the face, that combination of blue eyes and dark skin, really very striking, something we wouldn't have imagined. And to also get from the DNA, you know, details of his biology, the fact that he couldn't digest milk as an adult. That's something that came really with the advent of farming, and 10,000 years ago people in Britain didn't have that. And of course it's very striking for a 10,000-year-old human. Our expectations a few years ago would have been that this individual would have had, you know, maybe dark hair but fairly pale skin, possibly blue eyes. And what we've got is a quite unusual combination of this dark, slightly curly hair, really quite dark skin, and quite striking blue eyes.
1, 2, 3, bye-bye.
And in order to find out where the first modern human being evolved on this earth. And what they found was that the first modern human being who evolved on this earth was a black female. And in every one of your genes runs the memory of that first black female. People of color have been on the earth longer than white people have. That's a fact.
Any black person will tell you that the first human was black, right? And that all people came from black people and they were the first people to be formed. Well, I looked into it and this is what I found. I asked the AI tool if the first humans were from Africa, and this is what it told me. The first humans, Homo sapiens, are believed to have originated in Africa about 300,000 years ago. Let's look at the fossil record, shall we? The earliest known Homo sapien fossils have been found in Africa, including remains dating back 300,000 years in Morocco. Okay. Morocco, huh? I thought I'd better double check, so I asked the AI tool if the oldest human bones were found in Morocco, and this is what it told me. Where is Morocco now? There's Morocco way up there. Okay? Just so we know. Holy cow. It's not really in Africa, but it's in Africa, if you know what I mean, right? So let's see let's check out what's up with Morocco and the people there. Now, let's check out the bottom. Key groups that lived in Morocco. These were the indigenous people of North Africa, living in Morocco for more than 2,000 years before the arrival of other groups, the Berbers. The Berbers, right? What do they look like? There's another screenshot of what they look like. Oh my gosh. The first humans being black is looking kind of shaky now, right? Now let's look into the melanin issue. Inferred melanin levels of early humans. Genetic evidence suggests that early Homo sapiens originating in equatorial Africa had dark protective skin pigmentation. Equatorial Africa. Equatorial Africa, huh? Now let's check where that's at. Can you see where equatorial Africa is? Can you? It's nowhere near Morocco, is it? Oh my gosh. So yes, the first human bones were found in Africa, but they were so found so far north it's not even really Africa no more. And then the people who live in the region where the bones were found aren't even the same color as the people in equatorial Africa where they say black people originated. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Think about the things I tell you.
When I got back the results that showed that the number and the size and the amount of pigment in the light-skinned zebrafish were all diminished, and the same thing happened in humans. When I opened the textbook and saw that same thing, I began to sweat. Not only did light-skinned people evolve from black-skinned people, but lighter-skinned people, whether they're European or whether they're Asian, like me, were actually mutants of the dark-skinned people.
This was remarkable because we had only inferred on the basis of circumstantial evidence that this must have occurred in evolution, but we didn't have any concrete genetic evidence. Now we do.
Well, if you make the assumption that the human race arose like around the equator and that skin color, dark skin color would be the phenotype, then are you assuming that as people moved outward, there was a mutation, and if you were in the north, it allowed that mutation to live, which is how we got white people?
Yes.
Would that follow?
Yeah. If Nina Jablonski, who spoke in another one of your things, explained this, and she played a role in studying the reason for dark skin, which is if you have lots of intense sunlight, it destroys folic acid, and it turns out folic acid is really important for babies to develop properly, so it's not too good for a population for the babies to not develop properly. So that's why dark skin. Now, as you move north, there's another essential vitamin called vitamin D. There's an intermediate, biochemical intermediate, that needs to be then converted by the liver, but that intermediate's formed by UV light going through the skin. If you're near the equator and you have a dark skin, it still gets through enough to get your vitamin D. But now if you go north and it's cold and you wrap up and it's less sun because the sun's coming at an angle now, you will get rickets and have other problems supposedly. So that's thought to be the reason for selection for lighter skin.
All right, racists, let's talk about the truth. There is so much discourse lately about who is native and who is indigenous, and even the nerve to bring up who is the architect of soul food. And what everyone needs to understand is that black people are the earth. Black people are the only unmutated humanity. They told you humans came from Africa like it was a migration story. But that's not the truth. The truth is, Africa is the first face of the earth. And blackness is the source of all biology. Everyone else? Genetic drift, mutational echo, survival glitches adapted to ice and exile. Let's talk origins. The black woman is the womb of the world. Forget the Eve in the garden story. That was a stolen metaphor. The real Eve lives in the woman's mitochondria. And not just any women. Melanin-rich, thick-hipped, thick-lipped, and copper-toned. Elegant, poised, literally perfect, planet-rooted black women. White women don't carry the full ancestral genome. Asian, Mexican, and Native women only carry fragments. Black women carry the total code. She doesn't reproduce diversity. She births the whole species. When small African offshoot groups migrated north, they weren't evolving. They were mutating, adapting to survival, not thriving. That's where lighter skin, narrow nostrils, reduced melanin, and behavioral changes began. All signs of environmental stress, not superiority. You don't get white by evolving. You get white by forgetting the sun. And that forgetting is not advancement, it's regression. The white genome contains 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Let me repeat, they didn't just descend from humans. They were cavemen. Black people have 0 Neanderthal admixture. That's not a joke. That's biology. Black people are the originals. Non-black people are the remix. The problem is, the remix decided to express its evil nature by attempting to erase the original track. Let's talk indigenous. The term indigenous was invented by settlers to decide who was native enough to be managed, named, and displaced. But indigenous is a political term, not a genetic one. And political terms can't overwrite blood memory. Being first on the continent does not make you first on the planet. However, black people being first on the planet means they are first on every continent. The black genome is Earth's source code. Everyone else is just running a copy of their biological operating system. The war against black genetics is a war against humanity. Melanin isn't pigment, it's the processor. It's the molecule that translates solar energy into life. Plants have it, animals have it, humans need it. Black people have the highest concentration of it, which means black people don't just live on Earth, they translate it. They are not just a race, they are the root species. Black isn't a color, it's the motherboard. Every other group, adaptations, mutations, and mistakes. This isn't supremacy. This is truth. Black people didn't come from Africa. Africa came from black people.
I have been wanting to tell y'all this ever since I started this page, but I never got around to it because I was like, how can I put this without offending people? But I'm like, it's the truth. I'm not offending anybody because it's the damn truth. Did y'all know that whiteness is a mutation? Did you really know that? Like a long, long time ago, all people, dark brown skin and everything, we all came from Africa. You should know this, right? Regardless if you try to deny it, it's true. Well, the sun was super strong. Our skin was made of deep, rich melanin. It was a natural sunscreen. And our hair protected us from the UV rays. Yes, it did. The darker the skin, the better the protection. Now, here's where things get interesting. Because I'm going to tell you how the melanin started to change. Like some people moved far away from Africa, far into colder places where the sun wasn't as strong. Places like Europe, you know, Caucasus Mountains, you know, the coldest of the cold, the cloudiest of the cloud. Like those who had that melanin, oh, it started to get hard on their bodies. Like they couldn't get enough of the stuff that they needed from the sun. So what happened? Over thousands of years, tiny mutations in their genes, like the little changes in the DNA, made their skin lighter so they could survive better. Survival. Isn't the body amazing? Yes, it is. So yes, light skin or whatever y'all call it, whiteness, is actually just a mutation from the original African melanin. But here's the important part. It doesn't make anybody better. That's what black people have been telling. Anyway, it's just to show you that humans adapted to different parts of the world. Like how some people evolved and lived in high mountains with bigger lungs because of the altitude, right? Or some people have curlier hair and others have straight. It's all about survival. So curlier hair, like I said, protected us from the UV rays. That's why black people's hair raised to the sun. So remember, we are all part of the same human family. We began that way. It's just people don't want to admit it. It's just our families decided to take different journeys, and because of those different journeys, their body adapted over 1,000 years, and that's why your skin tone is the way it is. So what do y'all think? If the first humans had dark skin, does that mean all of us still carries a little bit of Africa inside of us? Which you can check your DNA, because I can guarantee it's there. And this is a true story, because let me tell you, Ancestry.com got people that claimed whiteness, that they're white, reaching out to me and my aunt saying that we're related, we're cousins. Yeah. I don't think if if, what's that actress name, y'all? I forgot her name. It's Lupita Nyong'o, the Kenyan actress. It's her. I got her DNA done on Ancestry.com, and she had the original Eve mitochondria. Like, her stuff dated back.
We found that she carries DNA from the oldest maternal haplogroup, a very ancient branch of the mtDNA tree, just adjacent to what scientists call the mitochondrial Eve, the most recent woman from whom all living humans today descend.
When mitochondrial Eve was walking around, there were no human beings alive outside of Africa. Everybody was black in the whole world.
Huh. I predate race.
You predate race. Yeah.
That's dope.
And that other historical man, I did a video on him. His DNA went back 300,000 of years in North America, a black man. His name, Albert Perry.
African-American man in South Carolina. He decided to trace his roots, sending his DNA to a lab. What he found was more than just personal history, it was world history. His Y chromosome didn't match any known category. It was unique, an outlier, something never seen before. This wasn't just a new branch on the human family tree. It looked like a whole new root. Imagine a lab technician staring at baffling data. Albert Perry's sample suggested a lineage that diverged from other human lines incredibly early. So early, it challenged everything we thought we knew about Y chromosomal Adam. Perry's Y chromosome seemed to predate him. This discovery sent ripples through the scientific community. It wasn't just Albert Perry's story anymore, it became humanity's story. A story of deep, ancient African roots and diversity we had not imagined. It reminded us that our understanding of human evolution is always a work in progress. There are always more secrets hidden in our genes, waiting to be found.
So, y'all, did y'all know this? Seeing is believing. For some of y'all still don't believe it, but it's okay, friend. Tap in and tell me if you knew. If you didn't know, tell me you learned something today. I learned something today, friend. All right, now, happy Tuesday.
Welcome back. Now, me saying that black people are the root race, I'll present. First, let's start with the scientific proof, okay? Because all life points back to Africa. That's number one. All life points back to Africa. Now, because even their own scientists have been forced to admit what they once denied. In 1987, genetics Rebecca Khan, genetistics or Rebecca Khan, Mark Stone King, and Alan Wilson published a groundbreaking study known as the mitochondrial Eve theory. They discovered that every living human on Earth can trace their mitochondrial DNA passed from mother to child, okay? And back to one African woman who lived around 200,000 years ago. That is their science. It's not ours. That woman wasn't European. That woman wasn't Asian. She was a black African woman. And that she is the mother of all humanity. Okay? The discovery shattered the old Eurocentric lie that civilization began elsewhere. It proved to many, or what many Asian African traditions have always said, that the origin of humanity is black and African. So, even National Geographic later confirmed it through genome projects that all DNA lines lead back to Africa. Okay? No matter how pale or no matter how far people immigrated or migrated, they all began as dark-skinned Africans. That's why scientists call it out of African theory. Okay? But we call it something deeper. We call it the return to the root. I call it the return to the root because as black people or Africans, we were never just early humans. We were the first architects of language, of rhythm, of art, of spirituality, and consciousness itself. Now, that is the proof from scientific is a scientific proof. When you go to Asian civilization, it states the black people are the foundations of the world. How? This is history. Long before Greece or Rome, before Europe even had roads or cities, Africa was already shaping human destiny. Let's talk about ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet. The world knows it as Egypt right now, but its real name is Kemet, meaning that black land. The people call themselves Kemites, the black people. Their pyramids aligned perfectly with the stars of Grion and Cyrus, okay, still stand up today as internal proof that black genius birthed civilization. When the Greek historians Herodotus visited Egypt in the 15th century BCE, he described the Egyptians as dark-skinned and woolly-haired. Okay? He was not confused. He was describing Africans. Even the word Pharaoh comes from African spirituality authority. And what did they build? They built mathematics, they built architecture, they built medicine and writing. So the foundation of what the world now calls science came from Africa. We have Nubian Kush. Before Egypt, there was Nubia, also known as Tasseti. This is the oldest known kingdom in human history. It was located in what's now Sudan. The Nubians ruled with power and grace, building pyramids long before Egypt, even most famous dynasties. Okay? Archaeologists found that Nubian pyramids predate many Egyptian ones and were built with the same sacred geometric knowledge. From Nubia, we go to Ethiopia. Okay? Abyssinia. That was its name, Abyssinia. The Greeks call it land of the gods. Even in the Bible, the prophet Amos said, "Are you not as the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel?" That is Amos 9:7. For those who read the Bible, you can go there and read that. That means what? That means Ethiopians were recognized as divine people, a root nation of spiritual connection. Okay? Now, the Aksumite Empire of Ethiopia was one of the four great powers of ancient world. Alongside Rome, Persia, and China, they traded gold, they traded ivory, and faith. They created alphabets, they created astronomy and theology that still influence modern religion up to now. Okay? Now, I have talked about scientific proof, I've talked about ancient proof, historic proof. Now, let me talk about the African fingerprints on global civilization. Now, Africa influence didn't stop in Africa, but every continent bears the mark of root race, as I call it, root race. We have the Olmecs of ancient America, carved stone heads in Mexico, huge, majestic, and unmistakably African in feature, broad nose, full lips, and African headdresses. Even early European archaeologists admitted that these statues looks African. Modern evidence shows that African sailed across the Atlantic long before Columbus. The Olmec civilization flourished around 1200 BCE, and its art and culture show clearly the connection to the West African traditions. Okay? In ancient India, Asia early civilization, the earliest people were the Dravidians. Okay? Dark-skinned, curly-haired, and phenotypically Africans. They built the India Valley civilization, the foundation of South Asian culture. Even the oldest Sanskrit texts, like the Big Veda, describe these early people with reverence and fear because they carried the power of the original line. Okay? Now, in East Asia, early Chinese records speak of black-headed people who taught agriculture and celestial knowledge, the African settlers of antiquity. Okay? Now, we talk about the Europe before whiteness. The first Europeans discovered through Asian remains like the Cheddar Man in England. They were dark-skinned and had blue eyes. And DNA studies in 2018 confirmed it, that the earliest Britons were black. So when we say root race, it's not a claim of superiority, but it is a fact of origin. Every human being on this planet began as black, and whiteness came later. A mutation, an adaptation to cold climate thousands of years after the African migration. Proof number 4 is the great denial. Okay? How they hid the truth. Why should they hid the truth? Okay? Now, once the world began to shift power towards Europe, the story was rewritten. During colonization, European scholars whitened Egypt in textbooks, erased black kingdoms like Mali and Songhai, and demonized African spirituality. Why? Because they wanted to convince the world that civilization was white, that Africa was primitive, dark, and godless, Yet, the very soil of Africa, records were lying there. Golden artifacts, stone temples, and Asian writing. All of these were proving otherwise. The 14th century emperor Mansa Musa of Mali, still recognized as the richest man in human history, led a nation that had universities, that had libraries, and trade routes connecting the world. Okay? Now, that time, Europe was in the dark age, and Africa was producing doctors, Africa was producing philosophers, and Africa was producing astronomers back then. Number 5, these are just the proof that black people are the root race. It is the awakening, the return of the root race. Okay? Now the circle is returning. History is rewriting itself. Science, history, and spirituality are aligning again to reveal what our ancestors already knew, that black people are the original stewards of this planet. Even white historians, even white geneticists, even white archaeologists can no longer hide it. Books, DNA projects, documentaries, all of these are pointing back to the same origin, that Africa, the womb of humanity. Okay? And this is more than history. It is prophecy. Because when the root race reclaim its identity, the world begins to shift. And that's why there is fear of our unity. They fear our unity, they fear our spirituality, they fear our creativity. Because what? Because when the root rises, the system builds on lies begin to fall one by one. Now, white people are finally accepting this. They're finally accepting that we are the rootless. Okay? Because they thought time would erase our memory, but truth doesn't die. No, truth does not die. We have hidden African civilization that were never taught to us. Okay? Because what they call hidden history is actually buried truth. Our ancestors didn't just build pyramids. Our ancestors built entire empires. And these empires connected trade, connected language and knowledge long before Europe even knew to educate. They even didn't know what education was. We have examples, starting with the Empire of Mali. Mali wasn't just a kingdom. it was a spiritual and intellectual powerhouse. Okay? Under Mansa Musa, Mali had Timbuktu, home of university, and Sankore, one of the world's earliest universities. Okay? Their black scholars taught mathematics, taught astronomy, philosophy, and medicine centuries before Harvard and Oxford even existed. Timbuktu libraries had over 700,000 manuscripts, and many still being uncovered today, proving Africa had organized education, spiritual science, and written laws. Even Islamic scholars from the Middle East traveled there to learn from African teachers. The Kingdom of Kush, it is located in modern Sudan. Kush produced queens called Kandakes, warrior women who ruled with grace and power. Women the Romans tried to invade Nubia. You know, when the Romans tried to invade Nubia, Queen Amanirenas led her army into battle and defeated them. Okay? Roman records even mention her as the one-eyed queen who humbled Caesar's legions. And that was a black queen defending her land against one of the mightiest empire in history and winning it. Let's go to the Great Zimbabwe. Okay? A city so advanced that early European colonizers refused to believe that African built it. Why? Why did they refuse to believe? Because it had stone architecture, complex trade routes, and astronomical alignment. Okay? Archaeologists later proved that it was built by the Shona people between the 11th and 15th centuries. In Great Zimbabwe, they traded gold, ivory with China, Persia people, and India. And this was centuries before Europe even set sail for the so-called Age of Discovery. Europeans had not discovered how to sail. So Europe discovered nothing because Africa had already connected the world. Another thing is the Kingdom of Benin, the Benin empires of the present day Nigeria. And this empire had one of the most sophisticated art culture in human history. The bronze sculptures were so detailed that 19th century European artists couldn't replicate them. In fact, when British soldiers invaded Benin in 1897, they looted thousands of these masterpieces. And now they are being displayed in British and German museums. Why did they steal it and went to store there? Because they cannot replicate it. They cannot. The Benin bronzes depict kings, queens, and gods. And this is a proof of a civilization with divine identity and artistic genius. Now, when the slave ships left Africa, they weren't just stealing bodies. They were scattering divine seeds, okay? Those ships carried the children of the root race across oceans to America, to Caribbean, South America, and beyond. But here is what they didn't expect, that the African soil or the African soul will survive every chain, every whip, and every attempt to erase its memory. Black people in the diaspora began to sing drum and dream the same frequencies as their ancestors. I'm talking about the spiritual DNA of the root race, okay? And that's why the sound of gospel choir in Mississippi feels like the same vibration as a drum circle in Ghana. That's why Caribbean Rastafarians chant Zion while invoking Ethiopian kings, because deep down, they remember. That's why African Americans dance, create and innovate with unmatched energy, because the root race can't be contained. Melanin isn't just pigment. Melanin, it's a memory. It's a divine intelligence that stores ancestral information. That's why we say we are our ancestors reborn. Okay? We talk about a melanin power of the black diaspora. Think about this. Despite being enslaved, despite being colonized and oppressed, black people build the foundations of modern nations. Okay? In America, they built the White House, they invented the traffic lights, refrigerator, the gas mask, the elevator, and more. They created blues, jazz, hip hop, and gospel. In the Caribbean, they led revolutions like Haiti, where enslaved Africans defeated France and became the first free black republic. In South America, the black Brazilians preserved Yoruba religion and as a candomble of Umbanda, okay? Candomble and Umbanda. They are still worshipping African gods like the Ogun and Yemaha. It's called Yemama or Yemaya. Even in Asia, the Sidi people of India and Pakistan, descendants of African sailors, still keep African traditions alive up to today. So, no matter where the root race went, no matter where the root race went, it brought light, it brought rhythm, and divine order. Now, why do they fear the awakening? The truth is, the system fears the spirituality awakened black person more than an armed one. Why? Because when we awaken, we remember. And when we remember that we are not descendants of slaves, we are descendants of gods who were enslaved, then everything changes. Okay? When you see yourself as divine, their system of control begins to crumble. And that's why for centuries they used 3 weapons to suppress the root race. 1, religion without identity, giving us their gods while hiding ours. 2, education without truth, teaching us to admire conquerors instead of admiring ancestors. 3, media without representation, shaping global immigration against our own image. Okay? But the digital has revised it. The digital age has revised everything. The truth is out there right now. Documents, documentaries, African historians, and diaspora creators are breaking the silence. Platforms like this, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagrams have become the new temples of truth. Okay? The world can no longer unsee this. No. Now, let me talk about the spiritual symbolism of melanin, okay? The key of the root race. Because the science of melanin isn't just biology. It is a divine technology. Melanin is the cosmic pigment that connects the human body to the universe, okay? It's in your skin, in your eyes, in your brain, in your pineal gland, and this absorbs sunlight, okay? It absorbs sunlight and transforms it into energy and enhances brain function. And that means what? That means that melanin is spiritual hardware, okay? Ancient Africans knew this, and they called this black essence of the gods. Kemetic priests painted their gods black, not because of race, but because blackness symbolized divine potential, infinite energy and creation. Even in Christianity, God said this, "Let there be light," meaning darkness come first. You get that? Let there be light, meaning what? Darkness comes first. Darkness is not evil. Darkness is the womb of creation. So when we say black people are the root race, we are saying that we are the original reflection of creation itself. Look around the world right now. There's a shift. And this shift is invisible. From Africa's economic rise to black excellence in art, in tech, in politics, to Pan-African movement reconnecting the diaspora, the prophecy is being fulfilled. In Ghana, the year of return brought thousands of African Americans home. In Kenya, the youths are leading tech revolutions, startups, and global digital projects. Okay? In South Africa and Nigeria, we are seeing music like Amapiano and Afrobeats are dominating the global charts. In the US, young black voices are rewriting political and social narratives. Okay? Even many white scholars right now are openly admitting that Africa is the cradle of civilization and the genetic root of humanity. So the lies are falling apart. And the system is trembling because what? Because truth is not just being spoken, but it's being lived on. Now, I'll say this. Before the pyramids, okay? Before the pyramids became tourist sites and before faith drew borders, Africans were already mapping the heavens, measuring time, and defining the soil, okay? Their knowledge wasn't superstition. It was science expressed through spirit. Kemet, it's a science in stone. How? Kemet, the Black Land, fused observation and worship into one discipline. Okay? The temple of Dendera is aligned to the rising of Cyrus, okay, marking the Nile's flood, an annual calendar accurate to the day. Priests in Heliopolis recorded the solar year as 365 days, centuries even before the Julian's calendar. Okay? Medical papaya, such as Eber's papayas list hundreds of treatment for infections and fractures. And some ingredients like honey, antibacterial uses are validated by modern biochemistry. So, for Kemites, matter and spirit were once continuum, and the word Ka, Ka, meant both life, force, and energy. So today's physics speaks of energy that never dies, and their Ka was the same idea written on in human form. So let's go to Yoruba philosophy and sacred order. Across West Africa, the Yoruba civilization built a system of logic and ethnic known as Ifa. Do you know Ifa? IFA. Okay? Rather than commandments, it offered data, 256 Odu or binary signatures generated through divination. Anthropologists and mathematicians have noted that the Ifa binary pattern mirrors the base 2 code later used in computer science. It's knowledge stored in rhythm and symbols instead of silicon. Yoruba cosmology also describes Ori. Remember, Yoruba tribe is from Nigeria, West Africa. Okay? They describe Ori, the personal spiritual consciousness. In philosophy, we might call it individual purpose or intuitions. Their concept that destiny is chosen before birth parallels today's debates of genetic and epigenetics. Information carried forward before experience begin. Okay? When Europeans first encountered Ifa, they called it idol worship. Now, cognitive scientists study its ritual chants as a mnemonic algorithm, oral data banks preserving thousands of verses across centuries without writing. Okay? We have a lot that define that black people are the root race. Dungeon astronomy, Ethiopia and Oxum. We have modern science catching up. So I'll say this. I'll say this. When people everywhere acknowledge Africa as the root race of humanity and the knowledge, the racial hierarchy invented to justify slavery collapses on its own logic. Okay? It doesn't make African superior, it makes humanity accountable to its source. Now, if civilization began in a land of dark skin, then diversity is not deviation, it's descent. If ancient African mastered astronomy, architecture, and philosophy, then development means remembering and not imitating. If modern physics echoes Africa metaphysics, then spirituality and science were never enemies. They were siblings separated by empire. I'll say this. From the stars of Sirius to the stones of Kush, every proof points home. The root race is not a myth, but it is a map. One that leads the world back to balance. Okay? That's what I have to say on this. Black people are the root race. Even white people are starting to acknowledge they are scientists, they are professors, they are archaeologists, they are proving modern science, ancient, all are sending one message: black people are the root race. And I'm so happy that white people are starting to accept that, because it is balancing of the nature. I have a lot to say, but let's meet on the next episode. Okay? Until next time, peace out.